Hello, this is Dr. Charmaine Gregory, and this is the Nocturnist Diary. Something very interesting just came across my thoughts here over the last week or so. I just been thinking about the fact that I am now, hey Cheryl, thanks for joining. The fact that I am now 43 years old and super excited about that because it is truly a blessing to have every single year on the planet when we wake up with our health and our strength and we are able to carry on. And even if we don't have our health and strength, just the fact that we are able to carry on our lives and impact those around us and just be appreciative of the blessings that we do have is a miracle within itself. So, just, I guess there's something about being in the 40th decade that makes you definitely reflect on how things progressed in the previous decades. And lately, I've just been thinking about what if things were different in my 20s and what would life look like now. So I am planning on doing a series, and this is the first part of the series, and it is going to be essentially what kind of financial advice would I give to 20-plus-year-old me, and how would I do things differently there. So I'm sure if you are like me and in your late 30s or early 40s or 50s, that you clearly can think of things that you could have done differently that would make life currently, make your current situation that much better. And so, one of the things that I, had heard when I was in my 20s that I didn't necessarily adopt right away, and not for lack of wanting to adopt it, but just not really having the resources in order to do it, was investing early. And I did appreciate that there is definitely a compound effect that occurs when you invest early in life, and as the years go by, the volatility of the market, for example, does eventually average out, and you can end up in a really good place by the time you're ready to reclaim those funds or cash in on the stocks and bonds or whatever have you. But I kind of wish that in my 20s I knew about Roth IRAs or things like that. I didn't. And hey, Linda, thanks for joining. And I feel like had I known about that, even if I had an extra $50 or extra $100, or I was judicious in budgeting in a way that I could put that kind of cash aside, that would definitely aid in making those kind of funds over time just really compound. So, that's one of the things that I wish I had known about and wish I had made provisions for in my 20s. And so Roth IRA, or investing even in the stock market, just investing in things that I knew about at that time. So, I was very into Ben & Jerry's ice cream. It's kind of a weird story there. But the reason why I was into that was because I was at my school, my alma mater, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, there was a Ben & Jerry's ice creamery in the student union, and so I would go there and I would eat Ben & Jerry's ice cream. But the business side of 20-plus-year-old me, or I guess 19 to 20-ish, would have been, instead of buying all those pints of ice cream, that I could potentially have invested in the company. Now, granted, Ben & Jerry's, I don't think I haven't really been following them on the market, but I don't think they're doing, as well as they were back then. But hey, thanks for joining. So, basically, I don't know if they're doing as well as they were back then, but, that would have been an opportunity for an investment in something that I was contributing to the growth of the business. I guess being a loyal customer to the business, I could have also had a little bit of a stake in, getting a little bit of a dividend as a result. So just as one example. Hey, Kelly, thanks for joining. So, Manitra, thanks for joining. So basically, just simple things like that. And then the other thing is, I really did not save. And it's not because I didn't want to save. I did. It's just that, there I was, a college kid, and, we did not have a lot of resources in our family at the time. And so, I basically was relatively on my own as far as fending for myself financially. And so there just did not appear to be any extra funds that could potentially be put into a savings account or in a CD or something that would, accrue some interest or provide some dividend in the future. And so that was just not something that I considered. Now, knowing what I know now, even if it were $25 on a monthly basis, it still would have made a difference ultimately in time. But I didn't know that back then. So that's one other piece of advice that I would definitely tell my 20-plus-year-old self. And then once medical school came about, I was again living on a loan. I guess I borrowed money because I didn't work while I was in medical school. I know some of my colleagues did, because I had a couple colleagues that were pharmacists and other fields beforehand, and so they were able to work and still have an income and still go to medical school. So yeah, I didn't have an income, so I was literally living on my student loans, and the budget was obviously pretty tight. So, I still could have potentially saved a little bit or even invested a bit, even if I were to put a little money into a Roth IRA or something like that, that would have made a huge difference. And then residency came around, and still in the 20s, because I got done when I was 30. So, during residency, I did start to think about these things, and because now I was actually having an income, and I did establish a Roth IRA and put some money in there, but I probably could have been a little bit more aggressive and put additional money. Hey, Cindy, thanks for joining. I could have been more aggressive and put more money in there. So the bottom line is, the biggest piece of advice that I would give to my 20-plus-year-old self in the financial category is to definitely make it a priority to save or invest in some way, shape, or form, because youth is definitely a powerful tool when it comes to investing. And even if it is a small amount, $20, $25, it still over time is going to make a huge difference. And I conceptually understood that, but I never made that a priority. And I think that, there are definitely areas in my budget then that could have allowed for me to put aside that money. Perhaps I maybe didn't have to buy that frivolous item or whatever it is, or even if I were to get like money for a gift, I could have put that money towards investment or towards a future instead of using it right then. So, these are just things that my mindset really was not thinking in thinking in a forward fashion as far as the finance piece of things. And so had I done that, I think that we would have definitely been in a different situation by the time the 30s and 40s have rolled around. But my hope is that, learning from these mistakes, that I'll be able to relay this information to our cherubs, and hopefully they will have a better understanding of money and the time value of money, and how money set aside in your youth can definitely compound greatly by the time that you actually need it, which is, later on in life. So, I think about basic things like, for example, there are situations, people who are fortunate enough to have family that will put money away when they're essentially from the time that they're very young, like, infants, and all the way through their life until they actually leave the home. And so, they can use that money either for college, to pay for college, or they can use that money for down payment on a house or a wedding. And I just think about that, that possibility being for our children, because, we are definitely realizing that and saving for them. But I hope that the mistakes that I made in my 20s financially will allow for our children not to make that mistake. Now, the other advice that I would give my 20-plus-year-old self is to not use credit cards, to make every effort possible to utilize cash. So if you don't have the money, you just don't get the thing. Now, I'm not saying that credit cards should not be used if there's an absolute emergency. Like, I can think of times when I did have to use my credit card because my car, was giving trouble, and obviously I did not have any extraneous funds because I was living on a very tight budget that entire time. So having the credit card definitely saved me in some situations and getting the car fixed, etc. But having that, even using the credit card for items that are non-emergency just, was not a wise move. And I did end up having some credit card debt at the time that I ended up, getting married at 30. And, in a way that wasn't very fair to bring that into the relationship. And so, just being wise with your money. You don't have to have a lot of money to really to have effective use of it. And so, I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I would, things that I would tell my 20-plus-year-old self. So I don't know. These are just my musings, my thoughts. So the two big things that I mentioned, number one was to invest no matter how small the amount. Start early and try to do it as often as possible, make it a priority. And then number two is refrain from using credit cards. Try to pay for everything in cash. So basically, if you don't have it available, then don't get it. But definitely have a credit card just in case there is an emergency, and only use it for emergency situations where you just do not have the cash to cover it. Like, for example, car died and you need to get it fixed because you need your car to get back and forth to your occupation, so to work. So those are my two big ones. And I don't know. I mean, I would love to hear from you all what kinds of things you would tell your 20-plus-year-old self as far as the financial side of things go, because I feel like, just sharing these experiences can definitely help our younger set, and, they can learn from our experiences if they are truly willing, so that we don't make the same mistakes over and over again, because that's a little bit of insanity. All right. So my daughter agrees. She's over here saying, mm-hmm. All right. So that's all I wanted to share, those two items. And I look forward to hearing from you all and seeing what your thoughts are as far as from the financial side, what you would tell your 20-plus-year-old self. And if you found this helpful, please feel free to share it and comment below. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to continue with the series. I'm probably going to cover other items like love and relationships and things of that nature. Some more to come. So this is Dr. Charmaine Gregory, and this is the Nocturnist Diary. And I truly, truly, truly appreciate your time and attention and support. All right? So be strong, be brave, and unleash your greatness.